to receive the presence of infinite spirit and express our oneness with each other. For we are one. There is only one of us. And we honor that and we accept that, for we know that to be one is to be all. And as we settle into our physical space and relax our bodies and minds, let us imagine that we are breathing in through the heart and sending that breath from the heart out into the world, into the atmosphere, into the allness. Breathing in through the heart, pulling in the love and presence of God, and breathing out, sending it out to each of us and to all our brothers and sisters everywhere. Receive ye the Holy Spirit. And one more time, breathing in through the heart. And once again, letting that breath extend itself further and further into the atmosphere and the universe. And returning to us fulfilled. And now breathing normally, relax into this moment. For this is the only time there is. Let go of the body. You can retrieve it again when we are finished. Let it go. Release the body. And we stand unencumbered in the presence of infinite spirit, the I am. There is no separation between any of us. Let us feel that connection. Let go of the physical body. Merge into the presence and beingness of all of us. I am you and you are me. And as we accept this, we remove all separation, all fears, all attack, all criticism, all condemnation, all judgment. For there is only one of us. And we invite in and embrace every man, woman, and child, every living thing on the planet. We call it forth to join with us. In our minds we say, I behold my oneness with you. I behold my oneness with you. I behold my oneness with you. I embrace and accept that we have merged into each other. One mind, one body, one spirit. Feel this now as we take a few moments in the silence. Oh, beloved presence, we know you more. We are so grateful for this moment with you and each other. Allow us to stay in this state of consciousness throughout this class, and even when we appear to go our separate ways. Let us remember this moment in time. For we are truly grateful. And we thank you in the name and after the loving nature of our elder brother, way-shower and master teacher, Jesus the Christ. And so it is, for it could not be otherwise. Amen and Ashe.
All right, and as we are still in this peaceful state, this blessed state, where we are one with each other and one with Holy Spirit, let us begin with our opening prayer to begin this meeting. I am here only to be helpful.
I am here only to be truly helpful.
Here to represent Him who sent me.
I'm here to represent God who sent me.
Do not have to worry about what to say or what to do.
I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do.
For He who sent me will direct me.
For He who sent me will direct me.
I am content to be wherever He wishes.
I am content to be wherever
He wishes.
Knowing He goes there with
me. Knowing He goes there with me.
I will be healed.
I
will be
will
healed
be healed
as I let him teach me to heal.
as
as
I
I let God
let him teach
to
me to
heal.
heal.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Amen. And
Amen.
Amen
Amen.
and a women.
okay. All right. Okay. So we are starting, I don't know what page, The Dynamics of the Ego, Part 5 or 6 in Chapter 11. Got ego. We're starting on paragraph 6. Paragraph. And Zeba, would you mind? You were the first one. Would you mind beginning us on paragraph?
I sure will.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Okay. You said paragraph 6?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yours is the independence of creation, not of autonomy. Your whole creative function lies in your complete dependence on God, whose function He shares with you. By His willingness to share it, He became as dependent on you as you are on Him. Do not ascribe the ego's arrogance to Him, who wills not to be independent of you. He has included you in His autonomy. Can you believe that autonomy is meaningful apart from Him? The belief in ego autonomy is costing you the knowledge of your dependence on God, in which your freedom lies. The ego sees all dependency as threatening and has twisted even your longing for God into a means of establishing itself. But do not be deceived by its interpretation of your conflict.
Okay, this is a very good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Zeba, what do you think?
Okay, so
If you all wouldn't mind muting yourself while while Zeba speaks, please. And then, of course, if anybody wants, Claudia's watching. If raise your hand or anything. Yes, Zeba. Sorry.
no, thank you. So this is, to me, it's about the dependency that we have on God and God has on us, shared dependency, and the autonomy of the ego. Now, the ego makes us think, that dependency is not a good thing, like it's as if the ego tries to make us believe that being apart from God and depending on ourselves, we can be powerful and do anything we want, and things like that. And in reality, that's not true. And so the ego actually wants to have autonomy over us, wants to dictate everything to us, do this, do that. And I actually did not see this in me until I realized this in, people around me who would just, without thinking, just follow whatever their thoughts would tell them. And it's really sad, you know. Whereas if we depend on God and try to follow guidance from God, our lives would be really easy and happy, and everything would be fine. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ziba.
Thank you.
All right, going out to the group. Thank you, Ziba. What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about that paragraph? That's a large paragraph, so there's plenty of meat. So what did you say? Well, I mean, somebody wants to raise their hand, please raise your hand. But what do you guys think about that? Who would like to offer an interpretation, personal interpretation, or what does that paragraph that Ziba just read say to Sandy? Sandy, yes, please.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. So one of my issues since I've been at Unity has always been the God out there and the God inside. And so for me, when I talk about my dependence on God, I'm referring to the Christ within, rather than, somebody in the sky. But I always get that when we're reading, I always get that, not confused so much, but we're talking about, I'm just clarifying in my own head, I think, talking about our dependence on that still small voice inside of ourselves. Okay, rather than, I don't want to say the bad word, so I'm just going to say the bee in my head that wants me to do something else.
Yeah.
The one that which is analogous to the ego. So I'm just kind of clarifying that in my head. And of course, the ego does want me to separate myself, because that's how the ego has fun.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's the way I'd like to say it, yeah.
Thank you, Sandy. And quick question, Sandy, if you don't mind. You mind if I ask you a question?
Of course not.
So which God seems more inviting to you? An outside, external God exerting its will, or an inside God that is within you that is wanting to be heard? Which one is more inviting? Which one are you more open or closed to, if you don't mind me asking you that question?
So the God of my childhood is and my early adulthood is the God outside. The God that speaks to me with a still small voice is the one that's inside. And that's the one that I'm striving or want to allow to be in my life. That's the one. But the other one rears its ugly head, rears that power and control, seems to rear its head sometimes. But the one that speaks to me is the still small voice inside.
Okay, thank you. And I just asked that question, Sandy, and I really appreciate that answer. Growing up, I've always had a rebellious nature. So the outside God attempting to exert its influence on me, I wasn't very open to that God. I was more rebellious. And then when I realized that it was only my right mind, it's only my higher self, and it to me, I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. So, if I'm warring with that, I'm warring with the part of myself. I mean, it's like, that's like insane or something like that. So that kind of really worked for me as far as in, getting me to heed that still small voice and things like that, and not associating it with an external force that you do this and you're going to listen and obey the God of your fathers and things like that, as far as that outside God that many of us were taught to fear. So just wanted to share that. Anybody else going out to the group? Any other interpretations? Bill. Yes, sir.
Thank you all. This one sentence got me where it says the ego sees all dependency as threatening, but this second part, and has twisted even your longing for God into a means of establishing itself. And like that's you hear what that say, or just like what the ego established, like my longing for God, and it kind of, I feel like you said it, Stephen, when you were talking about an outside God influencing me and trying to get me to do something, this and that, or an inside God influence me. Like, I at some point in my life, the desire for God became more important than anything else in my life. And I like to think the ego, it likes to think I did that, when it was really the inner God in me influencing my mind and pulling me along the whole time. Like the small I didn't do anything. And like I know in my spiritual journey, there's been times where I've thought, boy, why doesn't everybody get on board with this spiritual stuff? And why doesn't everybody? I have a really great hunger for God and truth and learning things. I can't believe, and I would go tell people, you ought to do this and you ought to do that. and so you could be as happy as I am, when I'm really angry about it, but but it's just so funny, and it just reminds me that it says your longing for God, the ego could even use that as a means for establishing myself. Like, this longing, this desire in the heart, this whatever, it's grace in action pulling me toward itself. And the ego likes to come in and take credit for it. So if that makes any sense, it's kind of hard to put into words, but it could. There's nothing but God. There isn't even a me that was here in the first place. A something separate from God. Like the whole idea that I'm here and I got to go find God. That's all an ego had thought, because there never was any distance. And so the whole journey, it's all been like something waking me up to the fact that, the whole journey, if anything else, has taught me that there really isn't any journey. There's just an awakening, a realization of what is and always has been, but that just, how at first reading, I thought, how can my longing for God be twisted, the ego grab that? Well, I know how it can grab that, to think that somehow there was Bill here making this decision to go to God, and that's kind of egoic thinking. There never was a Bill. It was all just God the whole time, awakening in the mind, I guess. That was asleep. Yes.
And I like what you brought up, Bill, about when you were saying that when you begin to come into a realization and begin to experience a peace, in your journey towards your higher self, how you then, still in your ego, just out of habit. Same here, the exact same story here. You were like, hey, you should do this and you should do that. And you know what I mean? It's like, you do this and you'll be happy too. And wanting to prescribe things on other people. They have their own journey. They have their own time when they come into realization. They may be more in realization than you, but at the same time, you're trying to put your way of thinking on them. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Came from that same place, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. So thank you. Anybody else? Anything? Huh? Mom? Okay. Unmute her. Mom.
Woo! It's hard to get your attention. So anyway,
Audience.
so let me let me propose a little bit of a shift in the perspective, because we talk about the God outside and then the God inside. But if you study quantum physics, you understand that the quantum energy is everywhere. Now, because we are made in the image and likeness of the full creative process and facilitation of the universe, that any time that we step out of the awareness of and the truth of who we really are, then we can manipulate the energy in another way. However, all of the energy, all of the quantum energy, all of it is God. When we step out of our right mind, will make things occur that are out of alignment with that truth. And therefore, that is how we created the ego. We created the ego because we thought God had left us, because it was very hard to discern where God was, because everything was God. And so we created the ego to keep us company and to take care of us, not recognizing that it was not coming from a place of the fullness of the wholeness of the quantum field. But all of the energy, both outside and inside, in absolutely everything, is God, is the quantum energy. However, because we are so powerful and we can have it our way, we manipulate that energy to go in directions that are not for our highest good.
Okay, thank you, Mother. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Any other interpretations?
Raise your hand.
We had Sandy, we had Bill, we had Reverend Sheila Gautreaux. Anybody else wish to? There's a lot of meat on that bone. I know how this group is, you know. I know how we are, a bunch of carnivores, you know. So, you know,
Are you hungry?
you know, anybody hungry? You know.
I could bring this up. I had a Zoom with members of the church where I belong, and the minister was on, and I brought up A Course in Miracles, and he said, "Oh yes, I read that," past tense, and he said I really learned a lot from it. But what bothered me was that it said that everything was in my head, and it was at the close of the Zoom call. So, well, next time we get on, we'll discuss that a little more. So, anyway.
Real quick, when Sheila was talking about that, there's only God. I forget who said it, but this whole hit me like a ton of bricks years ago, and it still does. That what I'm looking for is what I am looking with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I am that. That's why I could never find it. I was sitting on top of it. I wasn't.
So there's a wonderful book about that. If you've read The Alchemist, Paul Coelho. It's a lovely little story that I've read a number of times, and that is exactly it. The young man goes, searching for his treasure, only to find that it's where he started. Yeah, wonderful book.
And so the ego would have you believe, the ego kind of twists everything. So like, for example, where it says, for example, where it says God became dependent on you as you are on him. See, the ego would ascribe dependency with weakness. or interdependency with weakness. It describes love as weakness, you know? It describes, you know, being silent as being passive or submissive and things like that. It ascribes these negative connotations to some of the most powerful things that we could ever be. It ascribes a reverse value to it, you know? And the reason why I know about that is because I was once a subscriber to this way of thinking. I was once I was sold lock, stock, and barrel. You know, I thought that emotions were a form of weakness, not a strength, as it has revealed to me. It is a strength that leads to wonderful insights. You know, but I used to repress it. I believe that Bill talked about that. And when I was watching Course in Miracles from last week, and I was listening to Bill talk about that, about how he once ascribed weakness to his emotions, I was like, oh my God, that's me too. That was me too. And so I would repress it. I would repress these emotions because they were signs of weakness, is how I interpreted that. I was completely sold on the ego. I was hoodwinked, bamboozled, you know? All right, anybody else?
Ready for the next?
Is everybody ready for the next paragraph? Nobody wants to get any more meat off of there?
I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Nobody at all, huh? Okay, all right. Well, you know something? This is a really big section anyway, so it really doesn't even matter. We can go on to the next one. They got about like 18 or 19 paragraphs in this one. So, who's next?
Alice.
Elise, would you mind 7, please?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Oh, now you mute yourself.
You muted yourself, Elise. Press it one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Now, don't touch anything.
Just read.
Just read to us.
The ego always attacks on behalf of separation. Believing it has the power to do this, it does nothing else, because its goal of autonomy is nothing else. The ego is totally confused about reality, but it does not lose sight of its goal. It is much more vigilant than you are, because it is perfectly certain of its purpose. You are confused because you do not recognize yours.
Yours. Okay, so Elise, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it means your purpose. You are confused because you do not recognize your purpose.
Right. So what do you get from that?
Well, that you have to be careful about allowing the ego to take over, and you have to be vigilant and persistent about understanding what your purpose is. And your purpose is to be more of the light of God in the world. So let the ego get confused. You get unconfused.
Right. Amen. All right. Going out to the group. What do you guys think about that paragraph?
Are you there? Yeah.
Hey.
Okay, so I think it's really good, especially since it talks about the purpose. I'll be a little candid without curse words to discuss last week when you guys were talking about the ego. Like, if I'm honest, I'm in and out of A Course in Miracles. It's not like my favorite thing, but I'm always kind of drawn back to it. And I used to believe, judgment here, every time someone said the ego this, the ego that, it reminded me of the church when it calls to talk about the devil. The devil's a liar. The devil won't get me. I'm like, you people are crazy. I really think that. But I just kept, coming back, and I don't go to all the things, but I kept coming back. But last week I left this little group. I was like, I'm over this. They are talking about this damn ego. They're talking about this ego way too much. I'm just over it. Until I had like a revelation, and the way the ego shows up in my life is I come from a very male-centered family, and of course I'm not a guy, so you don't get as much attention, at least from my perception. You don't get as much attention as the guys, and so I always felt like I had to prove, right? So I had to prove that I was smart. I had to prove that I was strong. I had to prove. But that's nothing but me displaying the ego. And it wasn't until I was kind of focusing on, like, I'm really good at getting things, or, like in simple terms, like manifesting. But there are certain things that are just kind of like, taking a long time. And I was asking myself, what's the mental resistance here? And it's the intention that I had behind doing a certain thing. The intention was not to like enjoy, whatever I wanted to kind of bring about in my life. It was to prove that I could do it. I mean, I'm going to prove, and I mean, the whole proving thing, it's serious. It's like, it's deadly serious. And it wasn't until I, at like 3:00 this morning, I realized that. I'm like, that's what they're talking about. I can come to that group and understand what they're talking about when it comes to the ego. Because before then, I didn't think that was the ego. That was just me going off of the programs from childhood. So that's it.
Thank you, Krista. I remember my first realization when I was coming from my ego. I was reading Course in Miracles, been reading Course in Miracles for a while, and I was talking about all this stuff about ego. I was like, I don't get that. I just, I don't get all that, and so, I don't think I have an ego. I mean, at least it's been quiet. I don't know why. It's not coming. It's not talking to me like Course in Miracles is saying that, it's supposed to talk. I don't, And so my ego revealed itself to me. And so I was like, oh, okay. And ever since then, I definitely identify it. It hangs around. I keep, to keep his bags packed, you know what I mean? Because you about to hit the door, you got to get out of here, but it's just doesn't go anywhere. It is just still right here, So, I mean, we really, my ego and I, which is the part of me really that just comes out of fear, like you were saying, Krista, like where I have to prove something to somebody. True strength, you don't need to prove anything. Your defenselessness. Like Course in Miracles talks about defenselessness, and that's where true strength comes from. In being totally defenseless, because there's nothing that can really hurt you, nothing at all that can hurt you whatsoever. So coming from that place and knowing that you are just completely invulnerable because you're protected by God, there's no need for you to defend anything. There's no need for you to prove anything. There's no need for you to have to restate your statement or something like that, because someone's not siding with you or trying to convince somebody or something. It's just complete peace. And so, thank you for sharing that, Krista. I appreciate that. Thank you. Looks like Mom wants to say something.
William.
Oh, William? Okay. 1 second, Mom. 1 second.
Go, William.
Go ahead, William.
I'll just be quick here, but my ego is really good at pointing out other people's egos. It says, oh, that guy's in his ego, right? I know. I can see that. I can hear it. And I tell a person, you're really egotistical. Oh, no, I don't have an ego. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it gets into this dialogue of, so it's really good at pointing out other people's faults. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Mine. Go ahead, Ma.
What I was going to add to what you all was saying is that the ego will disappear when we no longer have any need of it. As long as it is still around, and it will continue to show itself periodically. It will let you know that it's still around. But when we no longer have need of it, it will be gone. So when we think about the whole ego concept, our job then is not so much to rail against the ego or to say, you know, be gone or get thee behind me, ego, you know, because when they talk about Satan in the Bible, that's what they're talking about, the ego. But when we no longer have need of it, when we let go of our dependency on it, and if we were not dependent on it at all, it would not be here. It would be gone. So that's just a little tip, is it will be gone once we no longer have need of it. And the evidence of it being present is because for some reason or other, we still believe we need it. And when we're able to step away from that belief system, it will be gone.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ma. You said Bill? Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. You know, Stephen, we talked about Earl Purdy before, you know, and I just love Earl's spirit. You know, he just drives it home. So when he's done talking, you don't have to wonder about what he was trying to say. You know, he said, I'll never forget one time, and I agree with him. He says, you know what? Want to know what the ego is? He said, I'm going to tell you what the ego is. That voice in your head, that's the ego. Spirit doesn't think. Spirit just, and I remember thinking, oh, you know, that makes it, you know, spirit is, you know, and the only mind or belief system that thinks there's an ego is the egoic thought system. There's nothing but God. And to me, you know, what helped me a whole lot in my own journey was a couple of course teachers told me, you know, because when I read through the course and I would say the ego this and the ego that, I had the same impression. It's just like the church talking about the devil, and I'm going to blame everything on the devil made me do it. You know, you come into the course and people say, well, ego made me do it. You know, it's the same thing. You know, and it helped me a lot to. And it says even in the course, I couldn't find it somewhere, that the ego is not an entity. It talks about it as if it is one, so you can appreciate the influence that false thinking has on your mind. And to me, it was helpful. And a lot of times when I read through the course now, instead of saying the ego this, the ego that, because I can kind of think of something out there, there's some ego out there trying to get me or this or that. I substitute the egoic thought system, or a thought system based on falsity, you know, starting with, I won't go into all the details. It's a thought system that's not true, you know, and that has helped me a lot, because I still to this day, if I read the ego this, the ego that, I can start thinking that there's such a thing as the ego. It's just talking about a set of beliefs that we've put together that are false, that we have solidly believed is real. Starting with the belief that I'm separate from you and God, and I won't go into all the details, but it's just an ironclad kind of view of reality that is not reality.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Debbie, go ahead. Can you hear me, Debbie? Go ahead.
I've come to be appreciative of my ego.
Okay.
And the reason why is if she didn't show up, then I probably wouldn't recognize that I'm stepping closer or moving closer to spirit. Because she tends to show up the more I anchor into that. And the more I anchor into that, the more sinister she gets. And my ego, because I was raised in this religious environment to not think highly of myself and to be a humble person, So I probably will shy back from being bombastic and loud, but my ego is the voice that says, you don't know what you're doing. Who do you think you are? This is never going to happen. You just need to sit down and shut up and don't say anything. That's my ego. And Reverend Farrellyn Mann was the one that pointed that out to me, because I didn't know that's what my ego sounded like. But my ego will show up and make me feel like I'm inadequate. I can't do a certain thing, or I can't step into the role of being a teacher or minister to people. That's when she shows up, and she will slice me up. And that I've been doing that all my life, not knowing that was my ego, and that's how she sounds. And so whenever she shows up, I listen to her. I listen to her and I go, okay, I hear you. And I'm busy right now. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. I have to hear her in order to step forward. She shows up either when I've stepped forward or I'm about to step forward. So yeah, I get used to her.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Debbie. And you know, the ego, you know, okay, so well, how do I want to say this? I want to put this disclaimer. So I am, you know, not trying to impact anyone's belief system about the devil or anything like that. But in the original books of the Bible, they didn't really have a devil written in there. The devil over time, as the centuries went by, began to take form and take shape. It actually happened when the children of Israel were, you know, still waiting to get their promised land. They were trying to get their promised land. They were conquered by many kingdoms, including the Persians. The Persians had a god of death called Amran, or something similar to that. And so they adopted a Persian god and gained a scapegoat, which, for us, like, this is why we have not gotten what was promised, our promised land. It's because of this devil now. And so that's where it first came on. Now, there was something that was referring to a devil, but it was really referring to a tempter. It was referring to the tempter, like Jesus was tempted by the tempter. And that was referring to our ego. But then they basically, you know how man is. We're master storytellers, and we can weave this masterful story of a devil and trying to get our souls and things like that. I mean, we're very poetic, very masterful storytellers. But yes. And so the ego was actually made to challenge us, to be honest with you. The ego is just basically serving a role, as Debbie was just now saying. She was saying when she's about to make some sort of breakthrough, her ego shows up and then really just lets her have it. You know, just really just lays in there in only the way that her ego can, saying exactly what, you know, the most perfectly diabolical things that it can say. It knows what buttons to push. Now, is this just as it applies to Debbie, or is this as it applies to us all? My take is this is how it applies to us all, because
they know our language.
It knows our language. It speaks our language. Absolutely, Claudia. It speaks our language. And that is a testing agent, a testing element that is, the ego cannot work outside of God. Nothing can work outside of God. So that includes the ego too. It's just a testing agent. It's playing its role. It's serving its role in pushing us while we're in this asylum to constantly reach new and newer and greater heights of realization. And that's all the ego does. That's all it does. You know, it doesn't feel good when you're going through it, but it, you know, a lot of times when we are being brought forth as a people into greater civilizations and civilizations of peace, and usually that's preceded by great strife and struggle, you know, and there's a difficult period, just like a woman in labor. There's a difficult period, a birthing process, in which she gives birth to this beautiful baby after going through this very painful period. And so, yeah, that's all I wanted to say on that. So does anybody have anything else?
Just as a, I'm sorry, just as a segue to that, and that's exactly what's happening right now, you know, in our world. That is exactly what's happening, and we're, you know, all aflutter about this. I am too, so I'm not trying to say that I'm not, but and to reference the book that William mentioned, Anna, grandmother of Jesus, that's exactly before Jesus was born in this book. You know, everybody was fighting. There was all this strife. There was all this, you know, and so it's the ego testing us. And I really like what William said. I'm going to start calling the ego negative thinking. That just makes better sense to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. You said what?
And Juris wants to talk.
Juris? Okay, yes. Juris, how you doing, Juris? You know, I've heard so much about you.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, this is so interesting. I love it. Thank you so much for Claudia for inviting me. This is my first time, so I'm a little shy to say something, but it is just perfect, you know, where I'm at, exactly where I'm at. And I understand that nothing happens by mistake. Everything is always synchronized, and you always get what you need at different times of your life. The Spirit is always, the omnipresent substance is always available to give exactly what you need. So what I got from here is that independence really depends on our complete dependence on God. That's what it is. That's the bottom line. Our independence depends on our complete dependence of God. And that's the ego doesn't like that, because the ego twists everything. I'm teaching Metaphysics 3. I took Metaphysics 1, 2, and now I'm teaching 3. And it's the ideas in divine mind that the ego twists to make it be something different than what divine mind in me intended to be through me, right? In me and through me. It twists the idea. And like someone said, this is exactly what's happening in the world right now. It's all about ego, because the ego likes to keep confused about the reality and also wants to separate. And that's exactly what's happening. You know, the ego, you know, is like, why? Like you were saying, Stephen, how it started, you know, thinking about the devil, and the same way they created the devil, like something outside, like they created a God outside of us. They created a devil outside of us that was always against God. But I believe that the ego is here, like, thank you for saying that, it is here to challenge us, like to challenge us, because we have the power and dominion over this ego thing. And it's all in our minds, right? Because everything starts in our minds. So by having control and dominion over my thoughts, okay, I have the power to control and train my ego to serve God, the God in me. Mm-hmm. To serve the God in me, because the ego is not going to disappear, because it's the part of human that we created in collective consciousness. It's never going to disappear. But like your mother said, what's her name? Sheila? How when is it going to go away? When we stop feeding it? Feeding it. When you stop feeding the ego, it's gonna go so hungry, it's gonna die. That's what we call in a 12-step program the disease of addiction. That always wants to make you feel confused, sad, scared. You're not good enough. You're not being enough. You're not being real. You're not being honest. You're not being authentic. You're not being the expression that God created you to be. And that's all it is. But I'm so glad I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. We're glad. We're glad. And thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Juris. All right. Anybody else before we, looks like it is time for, Charles. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. After Charles, and then we're going to go to break. Yes, Charles.
Now, this is, I could say, could be like a question as well as an invitation. This is the way I look at it. And I don't know if anybody else thinks of doing it that way. But first of all, I believe in living from the truth of who I am. And that is what the book invites us to do. Now, I look at it as a foundation. What is the foundation? The foundation is oneness. So if I believe in oneness and I say, okay, Charles, I have to live from the truth of who I am, what does oneness say about me? It says my identity is the Son of God. My inheritance is the name of God. You know, things along that line. If I live based on that and realize that in truth, there is no one else out there, then to me, that is the easiest way to undo the ego. Because in truth, if we go to page 210, or no, 232, it tells you about the ego. The ego is not your friend. It wants to kill you. So there is no way to fight something like that. All I do is to realize that the truth of who I am is I'm the light of God. I'm the light of the world. I'm the Son of God. So when I see that there's really no one else out there, what do I do with the images I see? I treat them like I would treat myself, not just in actions, but in thought. And to me, that is the easiest and fastest way that I know, I'm not saying for anybody else, that I know to undo the ego. Thank you for indulging me.
All right. Thank you, Charles. We appreciate that. And we are going to go take a break, an 8-minute break. So restroom break, coffee break, water break, snack break, any kind of break you want to call it. But we'll be back in 8 minutes. Good meet everybody. Okay, so we are coming back. Still got about another minute. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's time now. It's 8 minutes now. It's 8 minutes now. So, so do we have enough people on? Back on? Okay. So we were on paragraph 7, and did anybody have any questions about paragraph 7 or anything that we read? Did anybody have any leftover interpretations or anything like that that you wanted to share? Or are we ready to move on? Who's next, by the way? Deb? Okay. All right. Deb, are you back?
Yeah, she's ready, getting ready.
Okay. Deb, would you mind reading number 8, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Says, you must recognize that the last thing the ego wishes you to realize is that you are afraid of it. For if the ego could give rise to fear, it would diminish your independence and weaken your power. Yet its one claim to your allegiance is that it can give power to you. Without this belief, you would not listen to it at all. How then can its existence continue if you realize that by accepting it, you are belittling yourself and depriving yourself of power?
Okay. All right. So, Deb, what do you think about that?
That we don't know that. That we don't know that the ego is designed to separate us from power, real power, God's power.
Mm-hmm.
And it really weakens us, because when we listen to it, we forget about, like what Charles was saying, our oneness, our state of oneness, and that's where our truth and our power lies. And when we are not in that space, in oneness, we're not strong. We're not really strong.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, there is strength when we're working together, Deb. There's strength when we're working together. I don't know why when I went snorkeling in Cozumel, Mexico, why it just came to my mind. But when I went snorkeling, and it was just so beautiful underneath the water, and there was all these beautiful fish and things like that. But they always said everybody stay together because they didn't have any shark fences or anything like that. And so, who's the person that, a shark would actually, want to get would be the one that's, basically separated from the whole group. So, a lot of times that ended up being me because I was just like fixated with these beautiful fish that weren't even afraid of me. They were coming up to me and I could touch them and everything, and they wouldn't take off. They were just curious, and so then I would come up from the water and the whole group was like, maybe 20 yards away, and the water was so blue, and I'm just like, you don't know what's underneath this water, you don't know what's in here, so I don't know why that came to me, but yeah, but there is strength when we work together, but the ego would have us think that, that's a sign of weakness, so its whole premise, its whole thought system is opposite of truth. The truth is we are strong as one.
Yeah.
United front. The ego would have us believe, no, that's a sign of weakness. No. You just be strong by yourself. Be strong by yourself. Yeah, exactly. And so the ego would ascribe strength to that. And so yes, that definitely weakens us, Deb. And that's just a practical kind of or a metaphor or explanation, for what you were saying. So thank you. Going out to the group. Paragraph 8. Any interpretations? Anything come to you? Anything whatsoever?
Who say me?
Anybody?
Sandy.
Sandy. Yes, Sandy.
So just this idea that fear paralyzes us, any kind of fear, you know, anything, it paralyzes you. And my belief is that it paralyzes you. So if the ego, the negative thinking, wants to keep you, as Deb said earlier, keep you from moving forward. And so the more you believe the fear, the negative thinking, the less able you are to live your life fully. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else got anything? Anything speak to you, or are we ready to move on already? All right, Claudia, who's next?
Next one back.
Okay, so let me want to have Dad's my father speak. Hold on one second.
Paragraph 9.
All right.
Number 9.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second. All right, Dad, go ahead.
The ego can and does allow you to regard yourself as supercilious, unbelieving, lighthearted, distant, emotionally shallow, callous, uninvolved, and even desperate, but not really afraid. Minimizing fear, but not its undoing, is the ego's constant effort and is indeed a skill in which it is very ingenious. How can it preach separation without upholding it through fear? And would you listen to it if you recognize this is what it is doing?
All right, Dad. So what do you think about this?
Well, this sentence number 2, which says minimizing fear but not its undoing, is the ego's constant effort. Kind of stands out at me.
Okay. All right.
Skill which is very ingenious.
All right. Well, I'll turn that out to the group and see if somebody in the group can answer that for you. So my father has a question about sentence 2 in paragraph 9, where it says minimizing fear, but not its undoing, is the ego's constant effort and is indeed a skill at which it is very ingenious. Does anybody want to shed a little light on that, please?
Yeah.
Bill.
No, Bill, just unmute.
Go ahead, unmute yourself, Bill.
I love that paragraph. The Course says we're only capable of two emotions, love or fear. And we don't really even know what love is because we've made up a definition in this world of using that word that is not it, and we don't realize that we're in fear all the time. If we're not experiencing that state of complete ecstatic joy that is our natural inheritance, the realization of it's just the Course uses a lot of different ways of a state of no cares, no worries, completely free of doubt. It's what is real and true. However, the experience of that isn't with us a lot of time. And I know in my own journey, I used to think, well, I'm just a normal guy, and life is just, this is just the way life is. You can't be happy all the time. There's one of those egoic thought system beliefs. You just can't be happy all the time. That's not reality. Wait till reality sets in. All this stuff, that's egoic thought system, because God said that's your nature, complete joy, bliss, ecstatic joy. And I've experienced it enough that it's a real thing, and so I love that where it says that, about we rename it, we call it something else. We, in other parts of the, we don't mind thinking of ourselves as emotionally shallow, distant, callous. The last thing that fear wants you to do is to know you're afraid.
Hmm.
And that's how it hides, by our denial. I won't say I know this from experience. It's by denying that it's there, that it repressing it, whatever, that it by not shining the light of truth on it, by denying that it's even there. And if you don't mind, I was just going to read a couple sentences from a few pages down the road in the Course that I love. It's something just maybe to look at this right when and it goes right along with this. And it'll only take a second, but it says, when we have overcome fear, not by hiding it, not by minimizing it, and not by denying its full import in any way, this is what you will really see. And it's talking about the joy. It says, you cannot lay aside the obstacles to real vision without looking upon them, for to lay aside means to judge against. If you will look, the Holy Spirit will judge, and he will judge truly, yet he cannot shine away what you keep hidden, for you have not offered it to him, and he cannot take it from you. And then it goes on and on. So, the Course is talking about, in my life, I know it's about coming out of denial and seeing it's there, and if we're not having that complete experience of complete liberated joy and peace, you're blocked. We're blocked. I am blocked, and I don't even know it. Because I believe that that's something this world, or I have a belief that that's just the way life is. And I can't be happy all the time. That's not realistic. And I think the Course, in my experience, is trying to get us to say, like you said, you've been duped, man. That ain't the truth at all. You've been duped, and you've been living in the dream you made up with those beliefs, and it just can't be that way. And you don't even know reality.
Thank you, Bill. And you know what I also find to help to transform a feeling of fear into a feeling of that's a gradual acceptance, into where I'm actually looking at it, is just to share it. You can't heal what you keep hidden. That's why I always have, I always, enjoy hearing when people share, when they share what frightens them. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with expressing yourself if something frightens you. I mean, if you want to heal it, reveal it. Reveal it, and and then share it with someone else, and then it's almost like you're lightening your load. You're sharing it with someone, and then maybe they might have something interesting to say that might actually be able to help. Maybe not, but even just the mere sharing of it, I have found that to be very, very therapeutic, very powerful, like what we're doing here, kind of like what we're doing here. So if there is something that frightens you or anything like that, I mean, don't judge it. Sure, maybe you're coming from your ego, maybe you're coming from body identification. So what? I mean, we all do. So, but share it, and you might actually lighten that weight that you feel, because fear feels like a weight to me. It feels like, it feels like something that's kind of heavy to me, and when it begins to transmute, or I begin to relinquish it, it's like I can feel it lighten. And you can lighten some of that burden by sharing it with your brothers and sisters. So yes, yeah, of course. So I've got to turn this over to you. Sure. Go ahead.
Our system here, our sound system here.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just talking about that with my dad today. This morning I was on the phone talking to him, and we're talking about healing. We're talking that the things that we keep in our system, they don't allow us to expand our light and our, kind of our expansion of the spirit. And so he was even referring, I think this is the only good thing that the Catholic Church had, the confession. Because we all need kind of like to vent. But it's true what Stephen is saying, and we have this kind of dynamic that sometimes we share stuff that we find within ourselves. And yeah, so what we take out in the light, it heals and doesn't persist anymore. So the monster is not out there anymore. So once that we can realize it, so then we can see the things a little bit lighter. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. All right.
William.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was thinking, I've had times where being fearful, realize that it's in my head, and so whatever, I just kind of give it a personage or something, and I invited in to have tea. I said, "Oh, you're here again. Okay, well, let's sit down and let's talk about this. What is it that you're afraid of?" And so I kind of have a dialogue in my head, and oftentimes that's really helped.
Thank you. Anybody else? Juris? Yes, Juris.
And then Charles.
And then Charles. Okay. Go ahead. First Juris and then Charles. Go ahead, Juris.
Yes, I have a question. Because in the paragraph before this one, when it says, yet it's one claim of your, it's one claim to your alliance is that it can give power to you. So that makes me think like, I was talking about the 12 powers of the mind. If anybody is familiar with that? When I talk about the 12 powers of the mind by Charles Fillmore, that he assigned 12 powers, the 12 disciples represent the 12 powers of the mind. So I was thinking to myself, so the ego doesn't want you either to have any power or to think that you have power unless it gives it to you. Is that what it says there?
Actually, that says yes.
Okay, so Mom, want to go ahead and answer? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, it's a master manipulation. I've been trying to get Stephen's attention for a long time now, but I just was about to give up. It's a master manipulation, okay? So what happens with the ego is that it will take away some of your fear at times so that you feel that you are expanding, growing, whatever, you have no need of the ego, and then it'll push it back in for you. So you're right. It's because it gives it to you. So what you're saying is, what you were talking about is exactly that, because it gives it to you. And so that gives the ego power over you, because the ego is always competing with the power of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it manipulates us in order to, at times, give itself the belief that it is taking power now that God would normally have, but now it has, because it is manipulating us into doing what it wants us to do.
Yeah.
So yes, you're absolutely right.
And it can confuse you.
Very much so.
Easily. Got it. Thank you.
It plays games with you too.
Yes, in the mind. Yes, I got it. Thank you. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
All right. So we were on Charles. Yes, sir.
If I may add a little bit to what Reverend Sheila just said, when it's talking about power there, it's actually talking about egoic power. You know how I feel I have more money than you, so I feel I should be more powerful than you. I should be able to control you. Or I feel like maybe because I'm the CEO of a company, then I have more power than you. When it talks about ego giving you power, it's just talking about nothing but illusion. Because down the road in 2 different lessons, I believe it's lesson 38 and 190, it says, you have dominion over all things. That's from God. Totally different from the sort of illusion kind of power the ego gives you. And then now going to what I was going to talk about fear. When we talk about fear, there is something I remind myself at all times. Charles, remember to do the lessons. Because if I remember to do the lessons, there is a lesson that I believe is 48 or 49 that says, God is the mind with which I think. Now, where does fear come from? It comes from your thoughts. So if God is the mind with which I think, then if I'm thinking using that mind, then automatically, how can fear come in? Unless I allow it. You see, so when I remind myself at all times that, first of all, love created me like itself. Love has no fear, so he couldn't have created me that way. So when I remember that, and then also remember that my mind, really, I'm using God's mind to think, then all those sort of things let fear melt away. So I just wanted to share that with us.
I appreciate that, Charles. Thank you, brother.
You're welcome, brother.
All right. So before we move on, does anyone else have any part of paragraph, was it paragraph 9?
No.
Paragraph 9 that that you wish to expound on, that maybe you have a question about, a personal interpretation, what this paragraph says to you? Bill, yes, sir.
It's me again. You know, this issue of fear, you know, and I'm with, you know, and Stephen, what you said earlier about emotional stuff, you know, and for many years, I mean, I had the kind of mind, I memorized a lot of the course and everything, and it was all in my head and never on the emotional level, you know, like fear was like, I didn't know, I was out of touch with it because I had a concept and idea of fear. I was out of touch with the fear. And I've been doing some work with some course groups. I call it like 190 proof course stuff, where we go into feelings, and it uses the premises of the course of I am never upset for the reason I think. And we take an upset. And I won't go into all the details with it, but it's been the most powerful thing I've ever done. I've looked at and felt and released so much repressed emotion of fear, terror, and it's brought me to a place of the most ecstatic joy I've ever known in my life. You know, and it talks in the last section of chapter 18, I think, it tells a story. Jesus is talking about you're going to walk through the circle of fear, he calls it, a ring of fear. And when I first started studying the course, I'm like, I don't want to do that, I'm afraid, that doesn't sound like too much fun. I signed up for happy here, and and I remember course teachers saying this, and who've been doing this, and I thought, well, I didn't want that to be part of the curriculum, It says this is a required course, we're going to all do this sooner or later. But anyway, what I've actually experienced it lately, going through this process, has been the most powerful thing I've ever done in my life, I think, and it makes the whole Course in Miracles is like a different book to me now. It's not talking about getting a bunch of thinking. It says this isn't about learning. What love is can't be taught. The mind grabs a hold of it. This is about a shift in our energy, emotions. That's, to me, that's what I know now is what it means by spiritual. It's not mental, and so that whole thing, this is all just so powerful to me when it's like what it's talking about, fear here, and boy, I just didn't know that I had that, because I was afraid to even look at it, because it's terrifying to walk through it, because we're so afraid of what it could do to us. Now I should stop saying from my own experience and a lot of others that have done the process, through this thing. And it's I just wanted to add that there, because it's, and it makes more sense. In lesson 189 says, I feel the love of God in me now. I thought about the love of God, and but the feeling, I've spent so much the last few days in just crying, in like, I call it, the word came to me out of nowhere, rapture. I'm like, that must be what they meant. Something came and everything was gone, but it was like to walk through it. I as I'm talking right now, I feel like these words are just not enough to explain it, but this course is about, it says in the clarification for terms, this isn't a course in philosophical speculation. Its main purpose is to take you to an experience of God. Not to talk about the oneness of God, but to be there. And it's, get ready. Get ready, because it's just beyond any words, beyond words. And of course, it kind of says that too. But I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. And I agree with you 100%. Yes, Sandy.
Well, I just the discussion is having me look more at the very last sentence and actually the last phrase. Would you listen to it if you recognize that this is what it's doing? Now, what makes the course real for me is to relate it to something that is actually happening in my life right now, and what's happening in all of our lives right now. That we believe it. Excuse me. I have my moments where I believe it. And I mean, it's such a good example of how can it preach separation without upholding it through fear, So again, I just related to what's happening and how we collectively could get rid of all this strife in an instant if we would all change our minds. Now, easier said than done. Love our brothers, love our sisters. We are all one. No disease, rapture, all of those things in an instant. Gosh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could. But yeah, just the idea, would you listen to, and I'm going to put in there, fear, if you knew that's what the ego was doing? If you knew that was what negative thinking was doing? Thank you.
Absolutely. And you know, every single one of you all that is sharing, you know, I can think of moments like, you know, when I'm right there with you. Doesn't matter who it is. I mean, so there's a relative type of thing going on. And I see somebody else said, oh, okay. There's a relative kind of thing going on. There's a relative type of experience, you know, and from everyone's point of view, you know, but we're all still pretty much going through the same thing, you know, and I mean, that's what I'm getting from when I hear Debbie, and Sandy, and Charles, and Bill, and my mother, and Claudia, and I'm just getting this, you know, just different aspects of the same story that I find myself going on. So I find myself identifying with each and every one of you. A little bit of everything, absolutely. So, you know what this tells me? This tells me, Stephen, you are not alone. That's what this tells me. Stephen, you are not alone. So, yes, and I'm sorry, what is your name? Because it only says Spirit iPad. What is your name, please?
Oh, it's Karen, Stephen. And
yeah,
I prayed with you at church. You've made me cry.
Okay.
With your prayers, so beautiful. But yeah, I'm just another spirit hanging out in the world, you know. I just wanted to write on a few things that people were saying. You know, Charles talked about the light and being the light. And if we are filled with love and we feel that light and that I am and that union, then there's a phrase in the Bible, I don't know exactly how it goes, but it's something like, whatever you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. And there are a lot of things happening in the world that I never would have thought about before this lockdown, and stumbled upon and began to do some research. And while I have a peace in my heart, I still feel that I have a responsibility maybe to shine some light on things that normally I never would have thought about, or the people that I associate would never have thought about. Specifically, I'm thinking about children that go missing, human trafficking, these kinds of things. And so if we are coming from a place of love, and if we are light, shouldn't we can maintain our peace within, but we can share our light by sharing our knowledge, so that more people are awakened, because as you said, Sheila, we're a collective consciousness, and how we want to unite our energy, it can be for light or it can be for darkness. And there is darkness in this world. Okay, Stephen, you told us the history of the devil, so we'll just call it darkness. I mean, there are some things that happen in this world that it's not in the light, and the light needs to shine on it so it can stop.
Okay.
But I guess the more we realize that we are of the light and we join together, then we make the light more powerful. So I don't know how articulate I've been, but you know, I've been listening to a lot of what different people have said, and you know, unity is really important. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want mom has a question.
Yeah, she has something.
Go ahead, Mom. Is she on pause? I mean, unmuted? Okay, mine. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was listening to the last few people, and what I've been contemplating on lately, and I want to share, I have been feeling happier in the last few weeks than I have felt in much of my life. So I just want to share that. I don't know, but I have found in this, even in this isolation and so forth, I have found such peace, and I have become happy, and enjoying things that that surprise me. So I just wanted to share that, and we are going to reach that critical mass, and that critical mass that will propel us into that whole quantum leap in consciousness and demolish the ego and lift up the I am or Christ of our being into full status, full dominion. That will happen, and we are moving. Energy is moving on this planet right now, and we are not far from a critical mass. So I just wanted to share that. But the thing about the ego is that the reason that we still have the ego compelling us to step into fear, which is false evidence appearing real, and to make choices in alignment with it rather than alignment with God, is because we have not really understood that we are the co-creators of all of this. There's nothing outside of us creating all of this, the good, the bad, the in-between. We're creating all of this. This is us. We are not victims. We are powerful creators. And so if we don't want this anymore, change your mind. Change your mind and encourage and empower others to change their mind. Everything that is occurring right now is absolutely perfect. It's perfect. And when we can come to that realization and hold that truth within us, that we are not the victims of random acts of good luck or bad luck or being in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. Our lives are purposeful and have meaning. And right now, there is a quantum shift happening. And those who are in the fear and anger, that they are fighting to be heard, to be seen, because so many more people have settled down. Just think about it. Not asking you to align with anything, but think about it. Think about it.
All right. Thank you, Mother. And I want to say something as far as, you know, if you, you know, I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm honoring people. I'm honoring whatever someone's truth is. So if your truth is that you're a victim, and if your truth is that, you know, any kind of way you want to look at things, I think that that's okay. It is just fine however you want to look at it. Okay. There's, you know, there's always going to be a classroom that you're going to be in. Okay. So, you know, we're in numerous classrooms at the same time. You know, I mean, that's all there are, is many different lessons coming from many different classrooms. That's all there is to it. And so we move from one classroom to another as we learn these lessons. I mean, you know, to be honest with you, if you want to just take all of the extra energy and everything out of the whole thing, that's all we're doing here. We're just in a bunch of different classrooms, and all of these experiences are learning experiences. And last I checked, a learning experience is still a God experience. Last I checked, whether it's an experience of love or whether it's an experience of fear, you know, it's still a God experience. So it's okay. It is okay. It is okay. The only thing that makes it not okay is my ego looking at you thinking that it's not okay, wanting to sit up here and identify the ego that's going on in you. And like Jesus said, you know, how you gonna sit up and talk about the speck in somebody's eye? You got this big old log in your own, you know? So I'm just saying, you know, let me worry about my own stuff. I ain't gonna sit up here and worry about what somebody else is thinking. You know, I got my own logs I gotta deal with. You know what I mean? So it's not on me to talk about if somebody's coming from their ego or something, if somebody is, you know, not thinking right, or somebody is, you know, yeah, you know, that ain't on me to, you know, I'm not, hey, I'm going to honor your curriculum because that's all it is. You just created your own curriculum. And I'm going to honor that curriculum because that's the perfect curriculum for you. So that's what I'm going to say. Does anybody else have anything else about this before we move on? Bill, yes, sir.
I'll just make this real quick. You know, there's certain things in the course that have changed my whole, that they can't let me think the way I used to think or perceive the way I used to perceive. And one of the things it says in lesson 42, it says, your passage through time and space is not at random. You cannot but be in the right place at the right time.
Amen.
And my whole world was based on, oh, I could be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or something could happen that's not supposed to happen. And it also says all things work together for good. There's no exceptions except in the ego's judgment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the other, well, last but not least, I'll say it real quick. You know, it says, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and to come, were gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good.
Absolutely.
Right there, all the underpinnings of my whole view of the world went. And the course also says this course will be believed totally or not at all. Chapter 22, you know, because it's either totally true or totally false, you know. And I'm like, what are you trying to say there, Jesus? I mean, and it's everything I ever believed about the world is false. There's nothing happening by accident. Everything is happening for our good, for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Who's next, Claudia?
And Debbie.
Debbie? No, Debbie. Where is she? Debbie? Okay.
I was just gonna concur with you, Stephen, about honoring people's, you know, their truth, especially even when they're coming from a space of fear and you can sense it. To just say, I know what's happening, and I'm going to be the person to allow you to sit in that space, because that's the only way you're going to learn. But the funny thing is to watch their response to you when you do that to them. It almost throws them off a little bit. And I have friends that have been through this with me, and I watch them confused, like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, I have to stay in the space that allows you to stay in the fear. Because if you don't stay in the fear, you won't move from the fear.
Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
Just
no, I appreciate it. Absolutely. Because we suffer from PTSD. We're used to being bullied and stuff like that, as far as somebody telling us that we're thinking wrong way. You know, we're used to defending our thought, defending our fears, and defending ourselves. You know what I mean? You don't have a right to tell me what to be afraid of and stuff like that. You got to get all defensive because somebody sit up and tell them, don't be afraid. You know, it's just your ego. Don't tell me what, you know. And so, you know, so we're so used to being bullied. You know what I mean? So we still have PTSD. You know, and I realize that we have PTSD. Just leave people alone. Let them go through their thing. Let them go through their thing. You know. So we're going to go ahead and take a stab at paragraph 10. Who's next one? And then you know, we're going to do paragraph 10 all over again. But, I mean, we're going to read paragraph 10 to just kind of close it out. Jeffrey, would you like to read?
Let me unmute you. Hold on. Can you unmute Jeffrey?
Unmute yourself, Jeffrey.
We cannot hear you yet. Just hold on a second.
You got to push that microphone looking thing that's on your computer. Just click that and that should unmute you.
Okay. Otherwise, let me try. Don't click anymore. Let me try.
There you go. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Your recognition that whatever seems to separate you from God is only fear, regardless of the form it takes, and quite apart from how the ego wants you to experience it, is therefore the basic ego threat. Its dream of autonomy is shaken to its foundation by this awareness. For though you may countenance a false idea of independence, you will not accept the cost of fear if you recognize it. Yet this is the cost, and the ego cannot minimize it. If you overlook love, you are overlooking yourself, and you must fear unreality because you have denied yourself. By believing that you have successfully attacked truth, you are believing that attack has power. Very simply then, you have become afraid of yourself, and no one wants to find what he believes would destroy him.
What do you think about that,
So
Joe?
to use your word, Stephen, meaty to the bone. Well, it goes back to what Deb and I believe Charles had said about some of the earlier paragraphs. Charles, what I remember you saying about this appearance we have with the ego depending upon your place in the world, financially, economically, position-wise, and then Deb, what you were saying, sometimes you have to let people stay in their stuff to be able to get to where they need to be. It's not for you to choose or do. And in this course, Holy Spirit keeps saying, dudes, let me do my work. You just go ahead and do your thing and pay attention to yourself. And Stephen, you were just saying, hey, I got all my own stuff to worry about. I need to worry about you. Here is this paragraph saying, in your ego, you think you can attack. You think that you are going to rule. You think that you're going to change. You really do believe this. You believe this to your core until you get shaken up somehow, until something comes along to rattle your cage and to open you up and to expand your vision, to extend. Is that the right word, Sheila? To extend yourself. It's not about encompassing or pulling in. It's about extending, becoming that extension of the Holy Spirit. So that's what this paragraph meant to me.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate it. All right, so we got one more minute. Anybody got any one more thing? We're shutting it down. All right, so we're going to go over paragraph 10 again. We're going to start on paragraph 10. So, there's too much meat in this bone for us to just leave it unchewed, and thank you, Jeffrey, for, what you did. We got a bunch of carnivores, and so I know we're going to be chomping at the bit, to jump all over this.
We will be.
All right, that sounds like my timekeeper, William. That's my timekeeper doing his job. Thank you, William. All right, thank you, brother. Mother. She did the meditation. Is there anything that was like with a prayer? You volunteers. Okay. Close us out. Hold on, we got to unmute you. Hold on. If anybody else mute yourself, please. You're on. Is she? She's unmuted.
Pray us out.
Are you going to pray us out, Ma? Or did you want me to pray?
Oh, I didn't hear you ask that. Your voice was breaking up. I couldn't hear you.
Can you
Be
please?
glad to.
Thank you.
Okay. So let us come together at the level of mind, body, and spirit. And reconnecting with our oneness and allowing that beautiful chime to remind us that we are always vibrating at the energy of Holy Spirit. And let us remember the gifts we were given tonight. The gifts of the word, of course, in miracle, the gifts of the words of our brothers and sisters within this powerful group. And the energy of spirit that oversaw everything. And as we go forward, we take this with us and we spread it without even being aware of it to the world. It connects with everyone with whom we contact. And we are the change agents for this world, this life. And so we thank you so much, Holy Spirit, for all of this love and this beauty and this power, and for this wisdom of this Course in Miracles, and for this group where there is so much love. And as we go our separate ways, let us remember that we are forever joined as one, for it could not be otherwise. And so we take each other with us, and we are emboldened in our journey, going forth with even greater power, for we walk together in all situations. There is only one of us. We are so grateful, beloved presence. Go before us, prepare our way for success and divinely ordained outcomes. In the name and after the loving nature of the indwelling Christ and the Christ in the world. And so it is, for it could not be otherwise. And together we offer our amen.
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 Amen. Thank you. That was
Thank
beautiful.
you, Reverend Sheila, Mom, for that beautiful prayer. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes.
I love this group, as I have said often. I love all of the insights and beautiful sharing. Thank you so much. I love watching the videos when I post them, and then I can just like learn some more and stuff like that. And the following week I end up telling you about what you said and stuff, because I just love just to learn things from other people's point of view, other people's perspective. So I say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. I love
Thank
you.
you.
Reverend Sheila.
Love you so much, Ziba.
Love you too.
Bye,
Love you.
everybody.
all.
Bye.
Peace.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
See you later, guys.
See ya.